Hi, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of Mossback, the official podcast of the Mossback's Northwest video series from Cascade PBS. I'm Stephen Hegg, and in just a few moments, we'll take you to an event at Cascade PBS in Seattle back in October when history fans gathered to celebrate the launch of Mossback's Northwest Season 11. Knute and I had a wonderful conversation about the making of the video series and what's to come this season. We also had special guest Sarah Menzies on stage with us. Sarah is the executive producer of the series, and she dished on the evolution of the show over time and the thinking and planning that goes on behind the scenes. Plus, as always, we had some excellent questions from the audience. Just a reminder, you can find companion Mossback's Northwest videos at cascadepbs.org. But now, let's go to the Seattle studios of Cascade PBS. So, okay, and now for the man who needs no introduction, the man in plaid, Knute Berger, Mossback himself.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's really, we've had a hard couple of weeks, but this is incredibly rejuvenating and uplifting. And I just want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank you all for your support, your enthusiasm about the show. That's what keeps us going. And so, thank you.
It really is some of the best times I've ever had in television is working with Knute and producing stories about the Northwest. So, season 11, mister. It's hard to believe. And I should mention that the team is now multi-Emmy award winning. Do you have your gold up on your shelves at home?
I do. One of my granddaughters, who's 8 years old, when she came in and saw the first Emmy up there, she just looked up with awe and she said, "It's a golden fairy with wings." So she's very impressed.
Yeah, my spouse said, "I bet you can mix pancake batter with that really well." So we've done so many unusual stories. Every story about the Northwest ends up being unusual. How would you compare season 10, last year's season, with this year's season that's about to kick off?
Well, you know, each season is kind of I would say it's kind of a treasure to me. To kind of pull these things together almost like a collector. And last season, we did something different where we had 4 episodes on the Columbia River, and we looked at both the geologic history, the indigenous history, the exploration history, and then we put those 4 together after the season and released it as a half-hour special. So there was a lot of variety within the stories, but we also devoted a lot to one particular subject. And granted, it's a very huge subject. You could do stuff on the Columbia River for the rest of your life and never run out. This season, we're back to what I think of as the curio cabinet season. And I grew up in a family that had a curio cabinet. My grandfather had a curio cabinet where you put these really interesting artifacts of history and natural history, and you look through the glass at them, and each one has a story. And so I love finding stories that can fit in the Northwest curio cabinet. And this season goes back to that. There are 8 very different episodes covering, different people, different events, different time periods.
How do you craft a series? Obviously, there are more possibilities of stories than you can fit in a season. How do you decide what's a good mix, much less what's a good story?
Well, the first part of that is I collect ideas. I collect stories or potential stories. And I like to say that Mossback looks for what I think of as undertold stories. So that, there needs to be something new in there, and there needs to be something new both for the person who doesn't know anything about Northwest history, but also for the person that thinks they know it all. Can we surprise the history buff? And so I collect ideas from viewers and people who have read my stories in the past. I have a file where I put those ideas. I ask for ideas in my weekly Mossback Den newsletter. And every season, there's probably at least one, maybe two episodes that were people suggested.
Did you pick any stories for this next season that came from viewers?
Yeah, I mean, that's our premiere episode. Definitely came from suggestions. And some of the suggestions, people suggest the same thing over and over again. And different people, but they have the same idea. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And usually I need to kind of do a little digging before I accept or reject an idea. Just to kind of see kind of where it sets and whether there's a surprise in it or something I can add to it that hasn't been written about or talked about ad nauseum.
Do you ever think about when you get an idea, whether from a viewer or from your own research, that sounds really good, this one's going to be hot, but then you realize there's not enough archives or physical evidence or photographs or other material to support the storytelling?
Yeah, and I'm sure Michael or the film editors will tell you that sometimes we go ahead and make those episodes, and then they're like, "What do we show?"
Knute.
Well, Ken Burns was saying that one reason it took him so long to do the American Revolution series, like 10 years, has worked on that. One reason was they had never done a series where there wasn't photography or film. And so they had to find a way of telling that story with other existing images or reenactments or whatever. And so we've done certain things. For example, a couple seasons ago, we did a story on Wyatt Earp's time in Seattle during the Alaska Gold Rush. And a lot of people don't know that Wyatt Earp lived here for a while. He opened a casino so that he could mine the miners.
In Pioneer Square, right?
In Pioneer Square. That building still exists, although it's dramatically modified. And so we hired an illustrator to basically dramatize that story, and we found some historical material in newspaper headlines and things like that. So that's a case where we went ahead with a story that we probably shouldn't have made just because but we did because it was such a cool idea, but then we had to really stretch to be able to do it visually. And I come from print journalism, so it's taken me a while to learn that it's much better to do stories where there's a lot of visual assets pre-existing. And so that often steers the judgment.
With the one thing I love about your storytelling is you sort of take, there are connections that I would have never thought of, that you never would have put together. Is there a story coming up that has those kinds of connections? I know you have you mentioned Seattle as a literary city.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be interesting to do an episode about the sort of origins of books and literature in Seattle. And it turns out that Henry Yesler and his wife Sarah played a key role they actually founded the very first library in Seattle. And in addition, there was a connection of their family to Jack London. Jack London would probably not exist were it not for the Yeslers. And these people, Henry Yesler, brought the sort of first industry to Seattle, which was his steam sawmill.
You're talking about
Yeah,
Skid Road.
Exactly.
Henry
Skid
Yesler.
Road is named for the place where they were skidding logs down what is now Yesler Way to his waterfront sawmill. And so it just seemed really interesting to me that the fortune created by what is Skid Road laid the foundations for a city of books and literature. And so I'm excited about that episode. And that's just, we got a hold of a ledger that's in the collection at the Seattle Public Library that I believe lists some of the very first books that were in the very first library, so we can actually go and see what people were reading and what they spent their money on in order to get those books here.
You also reveal and tell the stories of very interesting personalities that are largely unknown sometimes. Catherine Montgomery is one. Horace Caton, the newspaper publisher, George Bush. Did you have a very interesting personality coming up in this next season?
Yeah, well, we have several. One of the ones that really interested me was Princess Angeline. Princess Angeline was the daughter of Chief Seattle, and I won't tell her whole story here. I mean, I don't think anybody really knows her whole story, but at the turn of the century, the last century, she became this ubiquitous, viral image symbolizing Seattle. Not her father, who had passed away by then, but she did. And I became really fascinated by, well, why was that? Why was she on thousands of postcards? Why you couldn't hear about Seattle without reading and hearing about Princess Angeline? And I think it's a really interesting story because I don't think it's well known. I think it's both tragic and beautiful, and so I think and also visually rich because she was photographed by everybody from Edward Curtis to dozens of photographers you've never heard of that wanted to make a buck off of her. And so I think that was a really interesting, at least for me, researching and writing that story really put a lot of awareness about her and what she was about.
Let's talk a little bit about, you just mentioned the very first episode of season 11, the episode on Mima mounds. You always have you do have a real interest in geology and archaeology.
I do, because that, I don't know about you guys, but so much was left out of local history or Washington State history. It sort of began with the Oregon Trail. And, if you think about the indigenous history that goes back thousands of years, and then you think about the geological history, which goes back millions of years. We did an episode in the Columbia River series where Nick Zettner and I got together in Chelan, and he was explaining why there's a big bend in the Columbia River. And of course, geography and geology are history. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a
like it or not,
things take place in certain places. And and so to me, something like the Mima Mounds is interesting because it's geologic, it's anthropological, it's a scientific mystery, and I'm a sucker for that stuff. One of the early episodes I did of Mossback was, why are there hardly any dinosaur bones found in Washington? And I actually turned to Nick to have him explain that on camera. That was years ago.
And then you did the episode on bison bones found.
That's right. We went up to San Juan Island where the prehistoric bison was found, and it had been butchered by somebody 11,000 years ago. And, but you could see the cut marks on it. And So our history goes back farther, and it's connected with our geography. When I was in maybe third grade or something, fourth grade, I did a gazetteer of Washington as a school assignment, writing little blurbs about every town in Washington, all the major towns in Washington, and I illustrated it. And the funny thing was, I basically said where these places were and then drew a picture of a sawmill in each town because that was how the town was founded. You know, it's much more interesting to figure out why there aren't more dinosaur bones here.
So at this point in the night, we played a sneak preview of the first episode of the season, one that Knute calls The Puzzle of the Pimpled Prairie. It's all about the mysterious Mima Mounds, a field of small, evenly spaced hills near Olympia. There are lots of theories, but to this day, no one knows why they're there. You can watch the video anytime at cascadepbs.org. Well, I do think even if you don't get an Emmy for this, I want to give you an award for the alliteration award, The Puzzle of the Pimpled Prairie. Very good. So what's
Stephen, go ahead.
What's your theory?
Well, first of all, I was going to say, Stephen was teasing me about the Peter Piper picked a pimpled prairie, you know. And I said that when I have a story where there's a mystery involved, I always resort to a title that sounds like a Nancy Drew mystery or something, you know, Hardy Boys. I'm open-minded about it to a point. I did not include theories about aliens and UFOs in the episode, and there's some people very wedded to that. They're welcome to it. I'm leaning in the earthquake area, and so's Nick, by the way. So he's my authority on this. But really, genuinely, no one yet knows. And I was interested because I had no idea. We've all heard, and I've done a thing on the Missoula floods. I didn't realize that same phenomenon happened in the South Sound between the Cascades and the Pacific Ocean. And so as the glacier retreated, it was continually blocking rivers coming from Mount Rainier, like the Nisqually and the Carbon and others. And so there were probably a succession of floods that would have provided water that could have laid the base of the prairie and that kind of thing. So I think it's complicated. But to me, I've been told if you ask a geologist, they'll tell you they think the earthquake thing. And if you ask a biologist, they'll tell you, no, it's the gophers. So
it could be the gophers, I know from experience. Yeah. Hey, let's introduce our director of original programs, Sarah Menzies. Because we want a little information, some background information about everything that goes on behind a Mossback's Northwest production.
How much time do we have?
I've worked with Sarah for a bit before I retired, and I'll just say, because she's not signing my paycheck anymore, having that kind of organization and strategic sight over a production is gold. It's so helpful. So I started with Mossback's Northwest in 2018 or 2019. You got here in 2021.
That's right. Yeah.
What did you think of Mossback's Northwest? Just sort of the process. Your first impressions.
My first impressions
of what we were trying to do.
Right.
And how we were trying to do it. Because it has evolved.
It has definitely evolved. Well, first, it is such a treat to be up here with you guys. I can't not say that. Having been a fan of the show for a long time and coming to this event, I feel very in awe. I feel a little starstruck sitting up here with you guys. Let's see. Well, I remember, Stephen, you were a part of my welcome lunch. We went out to lunch. I was still getting very much a lay of the land. I was about 4 hours in on the job. And as we were walking back to the office, I remember you said, I'm going to send you a link to our first episode of the season. I want to get your feedback. And I didn't really know what we were doing yet. I mean, I'd watched Mossback to prepare for the job and all of that, but I didn't know where we were at in the season. You know, I had a lot to learn. And I remember coming back from that lunch, sitting at my desk, and it was the D.B. Cooper episode of all episodes, which I think will always just be something special. And to be honest with you, I felt honored to sit there and give you guys feedback, which I think consisted of great work, guys. You know, I don't think I had much feedback with where that was at. In fact, I was at the Museum of Flight a couple weeks ago and thought of you guys in that airplane hangar and knew exactly where you were. I can still picture almost every frame, I feel like, of that.
I like that episode because I actually found 2 727 aircraft that had working rear stairways.
You're such an airplane nerd. We were just backstage and I was telling a story and you needed to interject to ask me, what kind of airplane was that? I mean, just now. And that's not the point of the story. So that was my impression. You guys and your banter and your knowledge of this place. I mean, I don't know if you know this, Skip, but every one-on-one that you and I have a browser open on my screen so I can be Googling what you're talking about as something to come back to.
Fact
I just
checking.
constantly, well, not fact checking. No, it's either places I want to check out or weird phenomena, whatever. I mean, I'm just constantly learning from you guys. So that's my impression of it, is super approachable, obviously quirky, having fun. And I think we've really tried to keep that spirit alive even after you left the team, Stephen. And Michael's been doing incredible work with that. How do we just keep this magic going? Yeah.
Well, I think every production, I mean, if this production, this series actually started 2 or 3 years before I joined it.
Right, yeah.
And every production has its very organic state when you start you kind of throw things together to see what works. And a lot of times it doesn't work. And then you evolve based on people's talents and their time and lots of other things. And the show goes in a certain direction. What direction over now, 7 seasons or 6 seasons that you've presided over, maybe 5 seasons?
Probably something like that, yeah.
What direction do you see it going in those 5 years? How has it changed?
Yeah, well, let me start before that because you did help that show evolve big time. I think when I was watching all the seasons before starting the job and just immersing myself in all of the work, there was a clear distinction that I think was probably you, Stephen, of introducing the teleprompter, which I think helped a lot, you know, where beforehand you were a little off the cuff. Is that right, Skip?
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
its own magic, to go back to that. I mean, you were able to, it just shows your skills as a storyteller, that you were able to tell these factual, detailed stories, I think based in artifacts, if I remember right. But then you just went, right? And then I think, Stephen, your a big piece of your evolution was, let's get this scripted, you know, he's got this here, and then there's more you can do with it because you've established that.
Yeah, and I think I would never suggest that because teleprompter reading is a skill that some people can do and some people can't. But it's also something that usually chills something and makes it much more formal. And I would never go that way. I want to have sort of a lively interview.
Yeah.
But that kind of interview would stretch into the hours for the kind of thing that we were.
Well, yeah, because you'd have to cut it down, I imagine, to get it to the time.
It was very tiresome. But the biggest thing was that.
Thanks.
Or Skip.
No, I mean, it's just the nature of.
No, it's okay, Skip. Steve, we've got it from here. It's okay, Skip.
But Skip is such a great storyteller.
Yeah.
He's such a great writer that the words just come alive in by themselves.
Well, I don't know if you get pimpled prairie. What was it?
Puzzle of the pimpled prairie. So I have had to learn to write so that you can say the words. What I was going to say is that, oh, what was I going to say?
I don't know.
Oh, what was
I got
gonna
something
say?
to say while you're thinking of it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, I think that was a big step. But I also came in shortly after the episode you talked about, I think it was out in Yakima, that, hiding behind the boulder. And, you guys
right.
were starting to do a lot.
Harry
You're
Tracy.
doing more. Yeah.
The
You were doing
outlaw Harry
more
Tracy.
of these field shoots. And I think that what we were able to show tonight is actually the perfect mesh of that evolution to what Michael's brought to it, which has been really digging into the animations. And so I think tonight, the Mima Mound story is cool because you get to see Skip out in the field experiencing the thing he's talking about, but we also get this other medium brought in, which is the animated illustrations to tell the things that we don't have images for. So I think that's been a big evolvement or a big evolution in the last 2 years. Do you remember what you were going to say?
I do remember what I was going to say, which is kind of appropriate that I forgot, which is when Stephen first told me, he said, I think you can do really well reading a teleprompter. And I was like, insulted. Like, you think my talent is reading a teleprompter? Is that cheating? And then he told me all the stuff. Oh, you're such a great storyteller, and you do this, and you read the teleprompter so naturally, and everything. And that, of course, that convinced me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't sure whether to be flattered or insulted.
But Skip, you are a journalist first and foremost, and a storyteller. So to be able to let your writing come to life in this way really does elevate the show.
Yeah, and the truth is, if someone else were writing the script and having me read it, I wouldn't do a very good job.
Because it is your voice.
I'd be all wooden like you were talking about.
Exactly. And really, many people can't write for themselves in a teleprompter situation. They just...
Who knew? You have these hidden talents that,
So, Sarah, as an executive producer, really, somebody who's really in charge of the budget, you're in charge for the resources, you're in charge of production schedules and everything. How is that important, and how does that influence a show, a series?
Well, more resources always help a show, if that's what you're asking. But
where do you spend your time?
It's an interesting role reversal for me because so much of my career was wearing all the hats, doing a lot of what our team is doing in the field, working for myself, being out in the field. And so this has been a very different transition to find creativity in the big picture, right? Of all of the shows we're doing, our whole lineup between video and podcast. You can tell, you can tell that I miss being in the field as I'm finding creativity and strategy. But it is working, and I think it's a good fit. And so because I know what it takes I've just been in the trenches, and a lot of our team who's here tonight have experienced that too. Others that are in management roles too, and also overseeing production schedules and timelines and this and that. We all know what it takes because we've done it. They're gone now, but I had all the calluses from hauling, pelican cases all over the world, and so we know what it takes. And I think that really helps keep expectations realistic, and it also means we know how to do things, with a bunch of duct tape and all the stuff you need. We can be scrappy. And I think that's something that really sets us apart. We have high standards for what we are going to be putting on air, but we also can do this scrappy, and collaboratively. And I think that's really been a theme on our team is really ensuring that there's this collaborative bootstraps. I mean, I think you asked it actually probably when we were hiring for your role, I think is when it came up, was putting a question in the interview, which was, are you a Swiss Army knife? And it stuck out to me because it is what I think each of us on the team are a Swiss Army knife too, Yeah. Did that answer? I went in a lot of directions there, but I does anyone have a teleprompter? I could really use one up here right now.
Well, the one thing that I think is really salient for me is, I don't want to be an old fogey and talk about back in the old days, but so much time and resources have to go into things like contracts, rights, negotiations. You know, we didn't pay as much attention many years ago on securing rights for things. But, you know, the internet, of course, has changed everything. Everything has rights attached to it. You can't take anything without really clearing it. And
this is a good chance to give an applause to Adam Brown, our production manager in the back, who handles a lot of that. Oh, there he is.
So I know you do spend a lot of time thinking about what is it going to take to write this kind of a show with the archives that we want to acquire. Even music, you know.
Everything. I mean, I think that's it. And I think something we implemented quite a few seasons ago now, were the table reads. Well, actually, even before that, Skip comes to us with about 10 or 12 ideas that we pare down to the 8 that he's going to research and write. And so in that first story pitch session, that's a lot of it is, what are we seeing when you're talking about this? And he hasn't even researched it. And he's just given us a short given us a 5-minute sort of, this is what I think the story is. So that's usually it, is how much animation are we talking? You know, what kind of footage is out there?
How many maps?
How many maps? Yeah. So we do it really early on to start. So that is it is unfortunately part of the conversation, is what can we realistically take on? And then of course, by the time we're doing the table reads is when we get to have some fun with it. You know, like, okay, here's the actual script, and let's start thinking about what these visuals are going to look like.
Does she tell you no very often?
Yeah. Do I?
Oh, I had some good ideas shot down last year. Yeah.
Now's a good time to bring them up. When
Yeah, you just try wait a year or so and then sneak them back in.
See if
as
she
if they're
remembers.
new.
Well, Mossback's Northwest is I think one of our earliest of our sort of current type of series. How has Mossback's Northwest influenced our other productions as they've been thought of and imagined and produced?
It's a good question. I mean, I think because it was the first of its kind, it is, there was sort of maybe a thinking of, how do we keep replicating this? And actually, it reminds me of, again, early on in the job, Rob, who kicked this thing off, our president and CEO, asked me for a meeting. I think it was probably week 1 or 2, and wanted to ask me what I envisioned for our short form video series, and asked me, Mossback's working. How do you recreate Mossback? You know, and I don't think it was actually how do we get a lot of history shows, but I remember answering him, again, still getting my own footing here. But I think I said to him, what makes Mossback so special is when you push play on an episode, you know what you're going to get. You know, you don't know the story. There's obviously plenty of quirky, fun surprises, of course, in every single episode. But in terms of like what you're going to feel, you know, or just a style, you guys had it so just fully formed and baked. And I think that's why it worked, because you could create a fan base that latched onto this person. And again, you knew what you were going to get. And I remember saying, I think that's what we've got to be creating here. It isn't just taking the Mossback cookie cutter and making more replicas of it. How do we make sure each show has its own look and feel and style, so that whether it's hosted or not, an audience can latch on to that show and know what they're going to get, you know? And I'm proud of our lineup because of the diversity and how different the topics range, and how different, I mean, this is a huge shout out to our team that they're able to create such different styles. Again, with a small, scrappy team that we're able to do that. I'm really proud of it. And so I do think that has been what Mossback has inspired, is how do we make sure that people are coming back for more, and that we can create something consistent in each of these shows that make them want to come back for more.
I think we have some behind the scenes evidence of what you guys have been up to, and I wonder if we might show a few of them, and if you would tell us what's going on here. Oh, okay. I see a river.
Well, Nick and I are trying to see who's taller. Yeah, well, this was from first episode of last season, and Nick had picked a certain place in outside of Chelan, and this was an episode where we had to climb up this big knoll, and
Can
see the river, and this is where the Columbia is complete. The land, the rock on either side of the river is totally different.
Different.
Yeah, there's different as me and Nick there.
And it looks, that's Max, right? Behind one camera covering his face. And of course, Resti, who's been the director of photography on the show for a long time. So it's always a full team out there making this happen.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
so this is just kind of a fun day that we had.
Next. Here we are.
So I had my Columbia River costume, no plaid, just a short sleeve shirt. And here we got time lapse. You get to see a shoot at speed. So here we are. We're in eastern British Columbia. The Rockies are on one side, and Columbia Lake. This is the source of the Columbia River. And we talked about this also. In season last season. Yeah.
Do we have some more, don't we?
Yeah. Are we running out of time? Maybe. Yeah. We started a thing a couple of years ago where we have an episode called Upon Further Review, where we have a conversation. Sometimes it's Stephen and I. In this case, it's Allison Mariella Desir. And we're talking about racism in the outdoors and the history of it. And it's a thing where we get feedback on something that we've done, and we then talk about it. It might be a mistake that we made, or a historical thing we overlooked, or raising an issue that we want to talk about. So we have one of these kind of conversational episodes every year now, and that was what we were doing here. But also, I loved it because you can see the different camera, they're like, you can see all the different camera angles at once there that we're dealing with in the shoot. This was actually the first episode that we shot in this studio here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Before that, we were shooting in a conference room upstairs. And getting 11 people and all that equipment into one conference room made a really
hot,
very, very cramped
one more
setting. One more?
Two more? Oh, well, not that one.
Couple of handsome guys.
Next. No. No, it's just Stephen and I talking. This is where we're at the mouth of the Columbia River. That's a shipwreck that's still there. You can go and see it. It wrecked in the early 20th century. And we had to walk a very long distance to get there because our equipment van got stuck in the sand.
Oh, here we are.
Oh, and the gentleman in the red vest there is Peter. See, the mystery or the puzzle of the pimpled prairie, brought to you by Peter Pringle. Peter is a wonderful geologist, teaches at Centralia Community College. He's a real student of, many things, but he was kind of a guide for us in understanding the mounds. And there's a quarry at the mounds that's off limits to the public where you can see inside of a mound, what's in the mound. That's where we are there. Somebody captioned this, "If Gandalf wore Filson." And
are you drinking?
What's in the bottle?
I do. It's like a bottle of Evian or something. It's like there are water bottles like hidden around my feet in almost all the shoots that we do, and this picture is embarrassing to me somehow, but the caption really says it all.
Well, there's a great season coming up, and I've had a little sneak peek at looking at some of the scripts. The Mima Mounds with you, I've just witnessed, and it really sounds so fantastic. And I just want to remind everybody that the podcast series will start up again in February, and that's going to be fun to do.
Yeah.
So.
And we have another announcement to make,
Right. And so what's on the horizon? What other than that, we got the season almost launched. It's done.
Right.
What's on the horizon for Mossback?
Well, I'm already working on season 12. Rest assured, there will be a season 12. And I'm currently compiling the ideas for that. And there's a podcast, as you mentioned. But the thing I really want to say is the University of Washington Press and Cascade PBS and the Mossback's Northwest crew, we are working on the possibility of a book. And so Mossback's Northwest, if all goes well, will come in written form at some point in the future here. And we have the two key people at the press, Nicole Mitchell, who's the director of the University of Washington Press, and Lauren McLaughlin. Where are they? Where are you? So there they are. Please give these guys a hand of applause. I'm really excited about this project, and we'll keep you posted. You guys are the first to hear about it, by the way. Not even there are people here in the company that don't even know about this, so they'll be shocked. But anyway, yeah. So we're very excited about that, and Nicole and Lauren. I'm really excited. Thank you very much for considering it.
We're going to go to your questions. I'm going to pick just a few questions because we're running slightly over time. With most documentaries at 1 to 6 hours, thank you, Ken Burns. Do you find it frustrating to fill historical stories into 7 or 8 minutes?
No, actually. I mean, there are stories that need more space, that need more time. I think I've learned a bit about picking ideas or parts of stories that you can do in 6 or 8 minutes. And so it's just trying to tailor the sort of gem to the time. But visual storytelling, which, as a writer, this has been a real education for me, is how much you can communicate by having objects on the desk or having an artifact that you can pick up, or in the case of a cannonball at the pig war that I couldn't pick up. There's a lot of different ways to convey information in a short space of time, and I think we get a lot in for 6 or 8 minutes. Yeah. We started out at 2 minutes. That felt a little cramped. But it was popular, and the reason we went longer was because viewers wrote in and said, we want more, we want them more, we want them longer. Mm-hmm. So we've done, a half-hour show and that kind of thing, but I don't know. I really love this form.
I do want to, this is a good plug for the podcast that you guys co-host together. That is our chance to get more depth. Those are 30-minute episodes. Sarah Bernard's here who produces that. And she has just worked wonders with it, I think, in terms of finding anything that may have landed on the cutting room floor, as they say, from your research. It's a chance for you guys to be able to, with a lot of shared regional history here, to get into other storylines that we can't fit in there. We used to call it the companion podcast, and it has just surpassed that. It really is its own thing now with the amount of depth. I mean, 3 times the length that we can fit in there. So if ever we can't squeeze it into the 6 to 8 minutes, I think that's become a really good place for those side stories to land.
Yep.
How did you get the name Mossback? Is it because you are still like a tree? I'm not sure exactly what that means.
Still like a tree?
Well, actually, somebody told me that
there's a fish called a mossback, isn't there?
Yes, yeah. But I was going to say that, just speaking of the tree thing for just a sec, somebody told me that the name Knute, K-N-U-T, in Norwegian means like stump. Or a knot in a tree.
That's funny because my last name Hegg is a Norwegian cherry tree.
Well, there you go.
Sarah,
that's why we get along so well.
What do you have?
That's it.
Okay.
Well, no. Oh, well, Menzies.
So,
wait a minute. Menzies is a tree. 2 trees.
There you go.
Yeah, Douglas fir and the madrona tree.
Yeah.
So, thank you for letting me in on your boys club here. Your tree club.
What was the question?
Mossback.
Go Mossback. Right. Where did that come from? So I'll keep this short. The term Mossback has been used at various times. Moss would often refer to, beards were referred to as moss, or an old fish that lived in a pond and had seaweed growing on it was called a mossback. It was also a term used for Confederate draft dodgers.
Mossback.
Yeah.
And but I came across the term in some accounts of Northwest pioneers who complained that newcomers to the region would make fun of them by calling them mossbacks. And it was a term that was sort of applied to people who were stuck in place. Sometimes it has been referred as people who are very conservative and intransigent, don't like change, that kind of thing. But in the Northwest, it was, kind of an epithet. These people, who cleared the land and built the homesteads, they're old-fashioned, they're not moving ahead fast enough, that kind of thing. And I wanted to kind of take that term back as a statement of pride and place. People who let this region grow on them as opposed to fighting it. And so that's where it came from. And I found some, interesting examples of the use of the term here in the Northwest in the late 19th and early 20th century. But then it was a term that just kind of disappeared. And I was writing a column for Seattle Weekly. I decided to name it Mossback because I wanted to make that regional claim. And and I've just kept going with it.
Last one. This is interesting. Most Seattleites aren't from Seattle. What influences do you see sculpting a new local Seattle culture besides money?
Well, I think people who move here and stay fall in love with it. And what they fall in love with, it might be the people, it might be amenities and things like that. But I think a lot of it has to do with the natural environment, feeling close to the sea, trees, mountains. And I know that's very cliche, but I think that is been influencing our culture here from time immemorial, before we Euro-Americans got here. But I think it still continues. And I think people know when they're a Mossback, when they feel at home here. Not everybody does. And but I think eventually people who stay with it do. And certainly many people leave. I don't have any particular sense of like how our culture should develop or change. But, I think that we're sort of becoming more sensitive to our history. I think a big motivation for people moving here, particularly in the 19th and up through most of the 20th century, was people came here because they believed it was a blank slate. Mm-hmm. They could come to a part of the country. Robert Kennedy came here in 1962 and said, "You people in Seattle are so lucky because you have no history. And you're not held back by the ties of the past like we are back east."
Wow.
That blew me away when I found that quote. He was talking to a local Rotary Club or something, and my thing is, no, we do have a history. For some of it's short, for some of it's thousands of years old, and knowing about it helps us bond with the other people who are here, and with the land, and so that to me, I hope that continues to be a very important part of our kind of private and public culture.
Yeah.
Thank you, Knute. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us tonight. Thank you for joining us for this special episode of the Mossback Podcast. All of the podcast episodes are companions to the Mossback's Northwest video series, and you can find it all at cascadepbs.org. Stay tuned for the podcast's next season, slated for launch in February 2026. This episode of Mossback was produced and edited by Sarah Bernard. Sound recording at the live event was by Resti Bagcal. Our executive producer is Sarah Menzies. You can subscribe to the Mossback podcast wherever you listen. And whatever platform you're listening on, please review us. We'd love to know what you think of the show. And check out the show notes if you want to get in touch. Also, if you'd like to support the work we do, join the members who make Mossback's Northwest possible. Your donation will help fund the Cascade PBS lineup of podcasts, the video docuseries we stream every week, local news, and more. Plus, members receive great member benefits, including Cascade PBS Passport with extended access to an on-demand library of local and PBS favorites. And being a member means you can sign up for an exclusive weekly Mossback Den newsletter from Knute Berger, where he offers greater insight into his latest historical discoveries. Go to cascadepbs.org/membership to sign up today. Mossback is a product of Cascade PBS. I'm Stephen Hegg. We'll be back soon with another episode.